So I wanted to get on, and because I've seen this article floating around on Facebook, lots of people sharing it, and I see some celebration in essence, and people, we're pointing out the fact that Johnson & Johnson is corrupt. We're pointing out with sharing this article that, a court case in Oklahoma has found them guilty of basically killing people. They have a hand in, a large hand in the opioid crisis that is devastating the United States and many states around this nation, and in fact, other countries around the world as well. But Oklahoma judge finds them guilty and orders a $572 million penalty. So they had to pay that. But when I saw that and I saw it being shared and they deserve it, I want people to realize, I'm hoping we can see that this is nothing but pennies. This is a penalty of pennies in comparison to the profits that Johnson & Johnson, Purdue Pharma, and other opioid manufacturers are making off of the lives and suffering and deaths of individuals in this nation. They literally murdered people. I'm trying to make sure that I hope people see the reality of what's taking place. The pharmaceutical companies, Johnson & Johnson included in this, have killed people for profits. I mean, I don't care if it was anybody out there, if they lied and that lying tongue resulted in the direct result of someone dying by a product they made. That CEO, that sales rep, the people lying deserve to go to jail. You know what? If an individual killed this many people with some whatever product you want to call it, if a supplement manufacturer lied about and built up bogus, fraudulent research and paid doctors and people to tote their supplement all over the place and tell people it would help them, but they knew it was getting them addicted. They knew for a fact it was killing people, and it was extremely deadly and extremely toxic and extremely addictive. You know what? That supplement manufacturer would be in jail. Our government treats manufacturers of pharmaceuticals completely different than they would a criminal individual who killed thousands of people. We'd call them a serial killer, but when you do it with pharmaceuticals through your lying tongue and fraudulent research and multiple other things that they build specifically to bring their drugs. Why was Siri listening to me? Like, why did Siri suddenly, I mean, I didn't touch my phone. Siri's over here, like, trying to talk to me. Creeping me out, man. But just watch, okay? So our U.S. government, if you go to, I believe it's like whitehouse.gov, if you go there and you get this report, if you TWD in the comments here sorry, not YouTube. YouTube will not work in the comments on YouTube. You have to go to the description and get the link to the website. I wrote a short synopsis about what I feel and what I see going on with the opioid crisis and opioid epidemic. I am going to give people out there that if they're suffering with opioid dependency or addiction, or that they have a loved one or family member, I'll give you a tip on an herb that I believe really shows the passion of God and the passion of Christ, that it's called passion flower, and that's kind of why I'm playing off of that. But this plant, this herb, was actually shown in a clinical trial to significantly improve the outcomes of detoxification, but it wasn't specific to detoxing. It was specific to helping to ameliorate and reduce the symptoms and issues, the mental health problems, anxiety and sleep disorders and things like that. The insomnia and the anxiety primarily were the things they measured, and they saw significant improvements in the outcomes of individuals suffering with opioid withdrawals. So when they're coming off those drugs, we need to help them. And I believe God had seen full well the future and how big Pharma and Pharma was going to deceive all these nations, deceive the people. And it's literally written in the biblical text that the drug companies, the pharmaceutical companies, the Pharma and the great men of the earth, the merchants, the salesmen, were going to deceive all nations with their use of drugs. So just taking that into account, God provided this plant, this herb, and you know what? I'm going to give you the information and point you in the direction of a clinical trial on that and let you know about that herb at the very end of this. But going back, the U.S. government did a report on the opioid crisis in America. You know what? This dollar amount here may seem huge to some people, but put it in perspective. Johnson & Johnson, their pharmaceutical companies, make multiple tens of billions of dollars on their pharmaceutical sales. Their cancer drugs, their opioids, their fentanyl, all their drugs they make tens of billions of dollars every single year. All right? The US government estimated the economic impact, the financial economic impact, if you took everything from the deaths, the lost jobs, the economic burden on every level, the medical expenses, the treatments, the incarcerations, everything that is happening because of the lies of the big pharmaceutical companies. And people want to say, well, it's not just the doctors and the big pharma. No, it is them. They're the primary reason this epidemic is where it's at. They have participated in flooding the market with prescription pills so that the individuals who would sell them illegally could do that. And they paid medical physicians to overprescribe. And they bribed doctors. And medical physicians participated in overprescribing. So folks, the pharmaceutical company is the root. It's that love of money within the pharmaceutical company that is the root of this economic crisis. So they are the ones who need to be held accountable, and accountable in a way that actually is punishment, not merely a tax on their crimes. $572 million is nothing more than a tax and literally the government saying, hey, we just want a little bit of share of your drug money and your blood money. That's all we want. And then the pharmaceutical industry uses the money they're making off of killing people with their lies and their opioids. They are using that to buy off our politicians. Our politicians receive blood money. They receive money that has been made through criminal acts. And I believe every politician should be held accountable for participating in crimes, accomplices to the crimes that the opioid manufacturers and big pharmaceutical companies have committed, because they're allowing it to happen by the laws we have in place within this nation. Such people as Marsha Blackburn, who wants to pass laws to restrict the DEA's capability of shutting down pill mills. Meanwhile, her family becomes millionaires off of the backs of individuals addicted or prescribed these medications. Unacceptable. And I'll point out people who are there. I believe they need to be pointed out, pulled into the streets, removed from office, and placed in jail because they are taking part in killing people. That's what they've done with their lying tongues. The U.S. government estimated in 2015 the economic burden of the opioid crisis to be $504 billion, folks. $billion. $572 million is a few months of profit for Johnson & Johnson. And Johnson & Johnson isn't like, oh, this one case, they did something really bad there. No, they've been found guilty in multiple accounts, one of which was harming literally babies, taking advantage of mothers and fathers wanting to take good care of their children, their babies. Their talcum powder, their baby powder, they knew caused cancer because they knew it had asbestos in one of the primary risk factors above the BRCA1 and 2 genes, above basically everything else that I can find out there. One of the biggest risk factors to ovarian cancer development is being exposed to their baby powder. And they knew about it for how long? We don't even know. All we know is they in fact knew that the asbestos was contaminating their baby powder. I don't know how it was getting in there. But the reality is they're putting it in their baby powder. It was causing cancer. Meanwhile, Johnson & Johnson actually produces drugs to treat cancer patients. So they have a powder they give and convince moms and dads to put on the genitals of young infants and babies, specifically women in this case, young girls, which will eventually lead to ovarian cancer in a large portion of them. So thousands of women have died of ovarian cancer or needed medical treatment for ovarian cancer, which then they're adding to the cancer risk with their baby powder. And you know what? when you spread that powder, guess what? I remember this stuff as a little kid. And guess what? You breathe it in too. So how many people are dealing with lung cancer as well because of this powder? And Johnson & Johnson gets the profit off of people's development of cancer. This isn't isolated cases. This is the heart and spirit. It's evil. These drug companies, these big corporations, they love money more than human life, and we need to say that, and we need to point it out, and we need to remove them from the positions in which they can continue taking advantage of people who don't know the truth. Punishment should be great enough to stop the crimes from continuing, but it's not. And that's the problem with our justice system here in the United States. Every dollar or cent that was ever made off the sale of their opioids or their baby powders should be removed from the pockets and hands of both the company and the investors. I know that may sound, well, an investor, he didn't know that they were lying. No, but their money should go to pay to help the people who are addicted to these drugs, or pay reparations for the families who have lost loved ones, or the women going through cancer. No, the investors got to make more money. And after this, because they expected it to be billions of dollars in this lawsuit, not the talcum powder lawsuit, but they expected the lawsuits to be in the billions, after this measly pennies in relationship to what they're profiting, the stock prices, stock market boasted about, hey, Johnson & Johnson, their stocks are rebounding, they're coming back. Because they didn't lose enough money to actually hurt them or punish them. Does anybody else have that just in your spirit? This is wrong. Why do we not have a justice system that actually carries out swift, complete, and righteous justice against those who are evil, those who are doing evil deeds maybe? I pray that Johnson & Johnson CEOs and executives would donate all their money, repent of their sins, and you know what? Ask Jesus to forgive them and everybody else, and say, you know what? We're going to give all the money that's necessary to take care of all these ovarian cancer patients. We're not going to profit anymore from our cancer drugs. We're not going to profit from the harm we caused. We're not going to profit from these opioids because we lied and killed people. We are murderers, and we're sorry about that. But if they won't repent, that's when the justice system needs to step up and do what is necessary to stop them from repeating their crimes. Johnson & Johnson knew for decades that asbestos lurked in its baby powder. And this is the issue. We have medical physicians who sit idly by, some of them wanting to help their patients, but a lot of them, the vast majority, are silent on these issues. They don't tell their patients that the products that they're going to prescribe to them are being made by murderers and thieves and liars. They don't tell their patients. They don't know the safety of these drugs, even though they're approved by the FDA, because the FDA doesn't do its own research. They don't properly warn their patients. And sadly, hopefully it's a small minority of the medical physicians getting the money, but we don't really know. Because evil deeds and corruption happens behind closed doors, in silence or in secrecy. These are the lawsuits, and when you search for lawsuits against Johnson & Johnson, right now mainly the Oklahoma lawsuit comes up, but there's multiple. And the reality is criminals try their best not to get caught. They got caught with the baby powder. They got caught lying about their fentanyl drugs. They got caught supplying other companies with raw materials to make the drugs. They got caught illegally marketing and training their sales reps to illegally market these drugs to medical physicians. They got caught doing those things. Most of their crimes, I bet you, don't get found out about. We need punishments great enough to stop the crimes from continuing. So folks, switching gears here, just giving somebody some light, hope. You know what? I just walked out the back door of my office right here. Here's the reality. You can even eat this stuff. That non-toxic and healthy. Except for maybe, I haven't seen them spray outside lately, so hopefully they haven't. But hopefully my landlord doesn't spray. Nothing was dead out there around the area, so no sprays hopefully. But this is a vine. This is passion flower. If you want to identify, it's a vine. Grows all eastern United States, very, very prevalent here in Tennessee. 3-lobed leaves, alternating leaves on the stem of the vine. Obviously the little tendricles that wrap around and grab onto stuff. I've got it all over my fences. They also, a generic name for it is maypop. And they'll have these little balls hanging off after the flower is pollinated. This vine did not have any flowers on it. The screen in front of you here in a second, Ashley will show you, but I'll show you a picture of the flower. The flower is unmistakable. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. But that's with the Passion of Christ. They just show you beauty, but also give you an answer to help you through some of the withdrawal issues that people may suffer when they're coming off of. They want to remove themselves from the bondage of the pharmaceutical industry. They don't want to give money to murderers and liars and thieves anymore. So they want to get off their pharmaceutical drugs. Sadly, in America, the FDA is approving drugs from like Purdue Pharma and other pharmaceutical companies that produced opioids and got people addicted and lied and killed people. They're approving drugs to treat the addictions. So the companies who cause the addictions get to make the money. But this is something that can help, and I'll kind of break down the study just briefly here. But it's also called maypop. Let's see if I can do it. See if it. There. That's right. Little kids, you can throw it against the wall, pop, when you get a little bit bigger one. But these seeds aren't ripe enough yet, but you'll have, they're a type of stone fruit. What that means is the seed pods inside, they have a white casing, liquid inside. It's very, very, it's almost like a sweet tart type of flavor. If I remember what sweet tarts taste like as a kid, I haven't had one in I don't know how long, but my kids love them. Don't chomp down on the seeds. I've been able to crush them, but if you got weaker teeth, you could easily break your teeth because the seeds are very, very hard. They can be ground up, and I've done that, but I don't recommend it. So I recommend I kind of like put a bunch of the seeds from inside the pod, and when they've got this like slight yellowish tint to the white seed pods, and then the seeds are black rather than white. That's when it's really ripe. The pods won't be nice and firm. They'll actually start to slightly wither up. They'll get less, I've seen one maybe the size of a baseball, but usually they're maybe 3/4 to half the size of a baseball. And then when they start to wither up and dry, the skin gets wrinkly. That's when they're edible. Now the fruit isn't the medicinal properties. Actually, the medicinal properties are in the leaves. So harvesting a lot of the fresher leaves, obviously on this one, you would have leaves that have holes in them, been eaten up by bugs. There's gonna be medicine in those, and it's not really any harm in using that part, but really I kind of stick with the ends that are much, much greener, and I pull off the leaves. I literally just strip it. You can use the stems, and all the stems are a little bit harder, but a lot of times I just do that. Grab the leaves, put them into a dehydrator. I can dehydrate these to make teas. They help with kind of neurological headaches, so migraine headaches. And they can even help with tension headaches. They can help with insomnia. We've even given them to our little kids when we want them to have a little bit better night's sleep maybe, or get them to calm down. It's been an alternative remedy that's effective for ADHD and shown in clinical trials to be effective for ADHD for children, so we can keep our children off of Big Pharma's addictive drugs that way. But you can make teas out of them, you can make elixirs. This is one of the things, this is one of our favorite herbs in the Wellness Way, is passion flower, because it has benefits for hormone balancing in certain circumstances and situations when we see it necessary with hormone imbalance in women. It has an effect that is similar to an aromatase inhibitor in helping to actually steer the hormones of the female body in the right direction, which would in essence show, according to when you look at quite a bit of the research out there on hormone-driven cancers, you'd have benefits there. So there's benefits there, but specifically in this situation, we're talking about passion flower's treatment of opioid withdrawal. And this was a double-blind, randomized controlled trial. So as they detoxed the patients with clonidine, they added to that regimen, that detox regimen, they added to that the passion flower. And they did an extract of this. And by using that, they were able to see significant improvements and reductions in the severe anxiety and the other mental symptoms, as well as the insomnia. And that's one thing. I've used this with many patients that have a difficult time sleeping. I would never want them to take sleeping pills from the pharmaceutical companies because people have actually acted out driving while asleep, eating while asleep, and doing other horrible things while literally sleepwalking because of the side effects of those medications. So this is a safe alternative, has an amazing safety track record to it. Literally, I would say you got more risk of the rain falling with glyphosate onto the ground, contaminating this plant than the plant itself. But again, I hope everybody shares in my just thankfulness to the Lord that He's given, and you can get it on me if you want instead of the study. I thank the Lord that He's given and prepped and prepared. I believe the Bible is true from the beginning to the end. And I think He prepared everything that would be necessary for people in every time of need. And I think about that this flower, in fact, the flower itself was used as a description of the disciples, the 3 nails in Jesus. It was the description of Christ's passion of going to the cross, God's sacrifice of His only Son, all right? That alone was passionate. It was just His passion shown there. And then the passion flower was used to describe and teach people about the passion of Christ. And right here it is. Both protocols were equally effective in treating physical symptoms of withdrawal, but the Passiflora incarnata is the scientific name of this. And again, this is our state, Tennessee's state wildflower. Passiflora was plus clonidine group showed a significant superiority than clonidine alone with the management of mental health issues following and mental symptoms following opioid withdrawal. So I think it's really cool. Make sure you get people this information. This is something God's created for us. And this is a medicine, like I've said. If you live in an area, region in the world where this grows readily, right now here in Tennessee, you could harvest this stuff. You could prep it. You could prepare it. You could make teas out of it. You could put it in your salads. You could literally make powders out of the dried leaves. Elixirs are going to be much more bioavailable and potent through that extract process. So they're going to have a higher and more potent medicinal property. That's why we do use elixirs when we're using these things. That's why we love elixirs. They're just so much more potent as medicinal herbs. So there's a clinical trial showing the benefits of that, many other benefits to that plant. But I wanted to try, and I'm going to try more and more of it, of showing you, okay, here's the problems with this world, here's the corruption, but also here is God's answers, and that's what I see in these herbs. So join me in thanking the good Lord for his what He's given us, I'm like, I had a fancy term that He's taking care of us like the little sparrows, Jackie says we need doctors that are holistic. Absolutely, Kelly. J&J fraud. Hashtag J&J fraud. I think most people are just kind of listening in. Yeah, Facebook. William says Facebook removes herbal medications now. Yep. Sadly, what Big Pharma tries to do is they try to take an herb look at single compounds, and a lot of times when you extract these single isolated compounds from herbs, you can actually have a negative, harmful effect. One of the things I've been studying here lately in preparation for an upcoming talk in a little less than 2 weeks, it's not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after that at 6 p.m., a prostate cancer talk, men's prostate health talk, September 10th. We'll be talking about that at 6 p.m. here in Central Standard Time, Tennessee. I'm going to be talking about that. It'll be on YouTube in the future, so if you're watching this video in the future after the fact of that talk, you'll get that talk and you can search for it through our videos on thewilddoc.com. But where was I going with that? Prostate talk, herbs. Oh, lycopene and different isolated nutrients from like tomatoes. So they find in tomatoes, tomato paste significantly inhibits prostate cancer, but when you use the isolated compounds from it, even in supplement form, can actually have a negative detrimental effect on cancer growth. But that's the pharmaceutical, that's the medical, that's the man way thinking. I'm like, you know what, God created the plant as a whole, use it as a whole. That's really my philosophy. And the science supports that and is supporting that more and more lately. You know, for a while, a lot of alternative, and this is what I see so often, is I'll see people going to functional med docs that give them isolated nutrient supplements, and actually they can have a detrimental effect over the long term because you're going to have deficiencies in other nutrients and compounds that are necessary for the full basically expression and use of those isolated nutrients that they're using in functional medicine. But we have to see that the power of the whole is much greater than the little sums of the little parts within it. So, but that's tomato paste is another one, just kind of throwing that out there. If you want more information on that, watch the prostate health talk coming up on September 10th here in 2019. So I'm going to look again. I don't see any other comments or questions. Love this, Jennifer says. Thanks for the knowledge. Absolutely. I hope to empower people because I really, really hope that if we can see the corruption and evil that is behind Johnson & Johnson, you know, their CEOs, the people that were involved in the lies. I mean, with the talcum powder, they literally paid researchers during their lawsuits. While the court cases were going on, they paid scientists to try and produce research that said, no, the talcum powder isn't causing the cancer, when they knew it was. So they're very corrupt. They're doing things purposefully to try and hide their crimes, both with the opioids, both with the baby powder as well. The reality is that company needs to be completely shut down. Our government isn't going to do it. We should take all the money back from all the profits of both those products, every product they lied about. We should take that and use it to relieve the stress and burden of the opioid crisis that our nation right now is facing. We need to see and point out what they're doing is what it is. For what it is murders, it is lying, and it is stealing. And they need to be charged with those crimes. People need to be charged with those crimes, not merely a subsidiary company. I gave you a link, TWD in the comments. I gave you a link to an article also. It's called Feds Found Pfizer Too Big to Nail. All right, that article talks about the drug Bextra and how Pfizer, the largest pharmaceutical company in the world, lied about the safety of that drug after it received FDA approval, but FDA rejected it for other uses. Well, they went out and they marketed it for the uses the FDA had rejected, and people died because of it. So by their lying tongue and their illegal promotion of that drug, people died, money was stolen, and they received a penalty that was worth 3 months, only 3 months of their profit from that drug. That was it. It was literally pennies on every dollar. And the Department of Justice said, one of the spokespeople for the Department of Justice interviewed by CNN said, I worry the money is so great, it's just a cost of doing business. They literally say that pharmaceutical companies know they're going to be found guilty in a court for breaking laws and committing crimes in the future. They incorporate the known expenses that they might have to have in the future during lawsuits. They incorporate that expectation into the prices of their drugs. And our government and our politicians get a share of that money. Thus, our politicians aren't strong enough and righteous enough to stand up and say these drug companies, the people need to go to jail who've committed the crimes and lied about it. and all the money needs to be taken back that they profited from their lies and then used to relieve the suffering and the burden that is on the people of this nation who they are supposed to serve. You know, if I was ever voted into politics, I would stand by those righteous rules and ethics myself. I love you all. I appreciate you all. Make sure you share the truth. Don't just like it. It is the only way we will save lives. Let's get people off the big pharmaceutical drugs. Let's point out the liars, the cheaters, the thieves, and the murderers. And let's demand they be punished to the full extent of the law so that their crimes will no longer continue. Thank you.